probably the first reason is that your movie is very, I think, very energetic. There is an energy inside it. Uh, and first of all, I have to ask them if they need translation, because if they need it, we have to do it. Qualcuno di voi ha bisogno di traduzione dall'inglese? No. Wonderful. So they don't need. Or they are too shy to say I need it. But apparently, but it's a very young audience tonight, so
Well,
it's not.
I'm sure everyone's English is better than my Italian.
Maybe the only thing we ask you is to speak not too quickly, because maybe
Okay.
not all of us are so experienced in the language. So and not please don't speak Irish and Gaelic because it would be really impossible. But I heard that you studied Gaelic, and I have not understood very well. You are Irish. Are you Irish or English?
I disappoint everyone with my accent because I'm English. I have an Irish passport, but I was born just outside London. I moved to Belfast about 7 years ago, but you know, I am I am English, unfortunately. Uh,
Because it's strange. There are some web pages where I read that you were born in Belfast.
the internet lies sometimes.
They are a bit confused, I think.
You
But
know what? I collect passports because I have an Irish passport, a British passport, and a Canadian passport. So, you know, it's quite the collection I'm getting.
like Michael Fassbender, he
Yeah.
too collects passports and languages. So, going back to the energy of your movie, I guess part of it comes from them, from the, the 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 protagonists of the movie, but part of it comes from you, I think, from how you decided to portray them. It's not at all a traditional biopic. It is something. It is, we could say, nearly the opposite. You didn't choose a very well-known singer, choosing to tell his rise and maybe decline, but you chose these boys that at the beginning, if I'm not wrong, they were not so well known when you started to work with them. How did it happen?
So, when I met KNEECAP, I just moved to Belfast, so 7 years ago, and I'd been there 2 weeks maybe, and I went to one of their gigs, and there was maybe 200 people, you know, there to watch them. So they were very small. No one had signed them. You know, they'd never released an album, and they were rapping in a language that, you know, very few people spoke. So they didn't exactly, you know, scream. They were going to be big stars. But I don't know. Sometimes you hear a band which, you know, their music, their sound just really resonates with you. And my favorite band growing up was Rage Against the Machine, and they had that sort of energy, and politics was very front and center of their music. And I felt like in a lot of music, politics had disappeared, and everything felt very PR'd and packaged and safe. And Kneecap were anything but that. I think that, you know, I started talking to them, and I'd had this idea for a couple of years about, you know, the music biopic was a very popular genre, but it was very paint by numbers. You know, you knew what the beats of it were going to be. It was always looking back on a big star through, in English we say, rose-tinted spectacles, which means like a very generous interpretation of their past. And I thought, could you do a biopic in a different way? And that is to do a biopic about a band that no one had heard of, and who were small, and almost follow their rise in real time, and how would that feel? Would that even be possible? And none of us kind of but dreamed that it would have played out as it did, where their debut album came out the same summer as the film, and it's been a real pleasure to go on that journey with them, where to be part, for to feel like you're almost part of the band as they go from playing to a couple of hundred people to playing to 40, 50,000 people. And knowing that, I think they would have got there anyway, but I know that the film has obviously gave them a profile and a rocket booster to their career. And it's great to see them using that platform in such a way to speak out about social and political issues that are so important in the world.
And so the movie and their success, are they parallel, or did the movie contribute to their success?
Look, I mean, it contributed. I don't like to, try and claim responsibility, because ultimately, they are a force of nature on their own, and the performances they put in, their music, them as artists inspired me to make the film, right? So they are always the starting point of all of this. And certainly when you ask me about tone and the energy of the film, I was very lucky, because often music is something that is an afterthought in film. You kind of, it's the last thing that you start thinking about. When
Yeah.
my starting point was, I had these songs that had this amazing energy and anarchy about them, and that instantly, from the first time I sat down and started writing the film, you could hear this music as you were writing the words, and you understood that it was going to be fast cut, that it was going to be chaotic and colorful and brash, and that was how naturally, if you were going to sort of throw yourself into the world of kneecap, that was the visual style that would work. And I think it worked for me, because as a filmmaker, that's a style that I really enjoy. And it did feel like there was no rules. We could just randomly cut to an animation scene. We can randomly scroll things across the screen. It just felt like that sort of project. And it wouldn't work the same if I was making a biopic about Napoleon. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't suddenly cut to a claymation scene and things like that. But it worked for the style of film and the subject matter.
Actually, the movie is very rich, very, and also chaotic. There is this chaotic energy through it. And how could you manage uh, um, to have a structure and to put a sort of order in this chaos? How could you balance order and chaos?
Well, I mean, for all the anarchy that you see in the film, there was over 1,000 storyboards. I'm a big planner when it comes to filmmaking. It's when you're making a low budget film, there's never enough time, there's never enough money. But what you do have is the opportunity in your own time, before you get to pre-production, to really plan out exactly what you want, so you don't waste time having to be on set and trying to figure it out. And so there was a huge amount of planning that me and the DOP, Ryan Kernahan, did to really understand even every transition in and out of shots. And traditionally, when you make a film, you kind of do coverage. You would do like a wide, a mid, a close up, and then maybe if you had time at the end, you might do a creative shot that you've got an idea for. But I knew we'd never get round to that creative shot, and we would just end up with maybe the same shots that every other film tends to have in a very standard way. And so we decided instead that we would start with the creative shot, the crazy shot, and that would be the first thing. And we would spend most of our time just doing that, and then we would do maybe one safety shot, and then we'd move on. And we felt, because we'd so extensively storyboarded, that that would be enough to make the film work. And it was risky, but it paid off, and it did work.
How many years did it take to make the whole movie?
I met Kneecap in 2019, sort of autumn 2019. So I guess that's 6 years, 5, 6 years. So it was a real journey, and it's crazy that the film has just come out in Italy though, because the film premiered at Sundance 2024, so a good, I don't know, 18 months ago. And since then, it's been worldwide. It's sort of, I don't think there's many countries that the film hasn't been released in, and Italy, I believe, is the last one. So thank you for that. Well, and also, why did it take so long?
I I don't know, but people are very happy that finally it arrived. And speaking about Italy, I think that we have some problems in understanding everything in your movie. It's so rich and full of things that are so related to Irish culture that obviously we cannot understand everything. But anyway, it's really it's so fun and at the same time political and at the same time also dramatic. So I think it's also very universal. But the thing that we sometimes don't understand immediately is that they are they in the movie. Unless we have read it in the reviews, not all of us understand it immediately that they are not actors, but they are the real musicians.
And that was kind of an accident, to be honest, because obviously I knew who the band were, the producers knew who the band were, and so when we decided over the credits to put some archive material of the band in real life, it was really just to have some fun, make the end credits a bit more interesting. And I was as surprised as anyone after the premiere, where people were coming out going, "Oh, they're a real band." Oh, we didn't realize that's a really cool ending, and yeah, it was. I assumed that everyone would know who Kneecap are going into the cinema, but that wasn't the case at all, and still isn't the case. And it's a happy accident. It's a happy accident to have that happen. And I think that's the film is best enjoyed in its own way if you don't know that they are a real band. I think that that's the most fun way to watch the film.
I don't know. During the whole screening, when I watched it, I was I was not sure. I had a sort of idea that they could be the real singers and the real kneecap, but I was not sure, so I don't know. But yeah,
But the
it's
thing is,
very interesting.
you can't. I knew that I had to use the real band straight away, because if you're going to have a band that not many people know, you can't really have famous actors playing them, because it works if it's the Beatles or someone like that, because the audience can go, ah, he looks like John Lennon. Ah, he. But if you don't know the band, then you don't know whether they're anything like them or not, and so it just doesn't work. And so it was a process of convincing Kneecap to star in the film themselves, and it was a big risk for me as a director. It was a big risk for them, because ultimately, if the film had been shit, then there'd have been it's not very cool to be a band with a shit film, right? One, two, it's very when you're playing yourself on screen and you're telling your own life story, if the audience don't like it or don't react well, it's not, you can't hide behind the fact you're just playing a character. It's you they don't like. It's your story they don't like, and that's very personal. That's very vulnerable, and we had lots of conversations about that, and they were very brave as artists to take on that challenge.
As a director, how was it to have them as actors?
Well, we did 6 months of acting lessons before production, and I did the acting course with them. So we all as a foursome, we did the acting course, and it was a very bonding experience. It gave us a very much a shared language when we were filming, and look, they really committed to their performances. I mean, you know, as a director, you can only do so much. Ultimately, at some point, you need your actors when the cameras turn over to go out and perform. And I think as musicians, they're used to that in the sense of you can rehearse your music, but it's when you step out on stage that you really give it 100%. And that was very much what they did when we were in production. Is I'd seen them in rehearsal, and I was happy, but when they got onto set and the camera rolled, they upped it, two or three levels from there. And also, they were surrounded by a great supporting cast of people like Michael Fassbender, Simone Kirby, and ultimately, good actors. They bring people with them. Good actors understand that a scene is only as good as the weakest performer, right? So they bring actors with they know that the boys weren't experienced, and they help them, and that was very important too.
For sure. So I will ask them, the people here, if they have some questions. C'è qualche domanda? Avete qualche curiosità? Ecco qua una prima domanda. First question.
I was wondering, the singers, how much they worked on the storyboard? How much was their input on the story?
Um, so it is there. I would say the majority of the film is true. There is some kind of stretching of the truth at times, but it is all based on their real lives, and they were very respectful of the fact that that the film couldn't be just a PR exercise. It couldn't just be about how great kneecap are, how cool kneecap are. It had to also be about, show the bad. It had to show controversial things, and that was how they were going to be, put across a three-dimensional view of who they are as people, and very much the sort of characters you see on the screen are them. Like, that's how they are, and it was always a conversation. It was always a collaborative experience, putting the film together. And part of that was because they're great at telling their own story through their music, and I wanted to involve them, and partly because the English have been exploiting the Irish for 800 years, and I didn't want to make it 801.
Is there anyone else that has something to ask? Nessun altro? Sì, ecco là, arrivo.
It's weird sitting here and drinking a big bottle of water on a cinema screen. It's massive. I feel like I'm drinking the world's biggest water.
You already kind of answered this question earlier, a bit of it. But I'm curious about how, so you knew kneecap and that inspired, like, gave you the idea for the film. I'm curious on how did exactly work the process of approaching them, and the producer, you were already attached to a production or it came after, and also the process of including the controversial bits, getting their input, and it's their lives. So how did it work? How did it work with the whole, like, also legal matter of, like, showing the most drugs or controversial parts of it? Did you find resistance with them or in the whole pre-production?
Um, I mean, there wasn't really a lot of legal issues to do with showing drugs. I mean, the band were quite intent on taking real drugs in the film until I explained to them that that's not how production works, because we may be doing a scene where you're taking lots of drugs, but then the next scene might be a scene where you're sitting at home having a chat with your mum, and it's not going to work if you're still really high on ketamine. So that I said we're going to have to do fake drugs, but they did snort so much fake fake cocaine and ketamine. It's like glucose powder, and I think they're all diabetic now from snorting it. But there was a few legal things to do with. I mean, no one um, from a production level wanted the line, "I want to blow you like a Brighton hotel," which the Brighton bombing was an IRA attack on Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s, and I don't think anyone's ever made a sex joke about a bombing like that. So it was seen as being maybe across the line, and I was very I was very determined to keep it in, because I felt like in the context of this fetish that Liam Ogan and Georgia have, trying to say more and more controversial things to each other, I felt like it was important to the scene that one of them said something that was so controversial that the other person was like, "Whoa, that's enough." Yeah, I mean, So, what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry, there was lots of bits of it. I forget. Sorry, I'm making you run back over there now.
I'm so sorry, I rambled a lot. The first part was how it worked, like you were inspired by them, but how did it work, approaching them
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
getting
yeah,
them to tell you
yeah.
their stories?
Um, it took me a few months for them to actually respond to it. I emailed them. They never responded to me, and I kept emailing. And then one day, I was in the office of a producer called Trevor Burney, and I happened to mention Kneecap was this. I was interested in doing a film about them, and this girl in the office turned her head around. And just the way she looked at me, I thought was interesting. And as I was leaving, I went up to her and said, "Excuse me, do you know Kneecap?" And she was like, "Yeah, one of them is my ex-boyfriend." And I was like, "Perfect, yes." So I was like, "Give me his phone number. Give me his phone number." And so she did. And I called him and said, "Look, meet me for a pint tonight. I'm buying." And I realized that Kneecap will pretty much agree to anything if you offer to buy them free alcohol.
So it was a bit a dangerous meeting at the beginning.
Kinda, yeah. They tried to drink me under the table, but I've got a few years on them. So
Bene, c'è qualche altra domanda? Qualche altra curiosità? Non vedo più mani alzate. Sì, ce n'è una.
How was it perceived politically in Northern Ireland or England in general? Was it there an impact or, I don't know, news around it that you expected or that you didn't?
yeah, I mean, the film did very well in Ireland. It was, I think one of the biggest films in recent years, which we kind of expected it was going to do well in Ireland. But there was also protests against the film in Ireland because, as you see in the film, there's two communities, there's two sides, and in Protestant areas, cinemas there had protests against showing the film. And to their credit, I don't think any of the cinemas backed down. They still showed the film. And I that always made me a bit sad because I think that the film isn't actually sectarian in any way. I don't think the film is one side or the other. I think it has a laugh at both sides of the community. And actually, when I've spoken to people who are from the Protestant community who've watched the film, they've really enjoyed it. You know what I mean? They've seen the humor. And look, one good thing about the Irish and the Northern Irish, perhaps particularly, or is they're happy to laugh at themselves. They've got a good sense of humor, and so I think everyone who's from the north of Ireland, found something in there that they enjoyed. And then the film did really well, in the UK, and I think that's because the Irish diaspora around the world is huge. That's one thing about so many people, from Ireland emigrating to all over the world is that when you have such an Irish film, it will find an audience. And we did screenings at the Sydney Opera House to 800 people or something, and just full of Irish, and it actually became a real cultural event in its own way. I think that one thing I'm really proud of is that in a era when we have a lot of content, TikTok and here today, come tomorrow sort of videos, that kneecap in Ireland at least is kind of a cultural artifact, that it's really had an impact upon how young people view the Irish language. And we're seeing a resurgence of young people learning the language, using the language. And in a time when indigenous minority languages are dying at such a pace, the kneecap shows a way to save them. It shows a way of how to turn that tide and reinvigorate them. And that's through art, that's through cultural relevance, and that's through having fun with them and making them relevant to young people, because no language can survive if it's only spoken by older people who are, one day going to die. You need a younger, fresh blood to speak it too, and we're seeing that with the Irish language.
Thank you, Rich. Really. Just to check, is there anyone here with Irish origins? Nessuno qua con origini irlandesi? Yeah, one girl.
Hey.
Okay, so thank you. It has been really very, very interesting to know something more about this beautiful movie. You have to spread the voice. The movie is still at the Beltrade in the next days, so tell your friends. And thank you to you, Rich, and I think you all have to thank him with a big applause.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming out. It really does mean a lot that the film is finding an audience in your beautiful country.
We hope to have you here in person next time for your next movies.
I promise. Next time I'll be there. I promise.
Okay, we are very close to the central station.
Okay.
And also the buses coming from the airport arrive really close to here. So we wait for you.
Good to know.
Okay. Thank you again.
Bye.
Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Grazie a tutti. Buonanotte.